Good afternoon, my name is Henrietta Catley. I'm a research associate at the University of Sheffield and part of the Unreliable Science project. I'm going to be delivering the lecture, which relates to the Digital Services Act and the Code of Conduct on Disinformation. I'm going to begin by providing a brief bit of context to the regulation and then discuss the Digital Services Act and the Code of Conduct. So the internet has had a transformative effect on the way in which we receive and share information online. It has democratized and increased the flow of information in the sense that anything can be published by anyone instantly. Information, including mis- and disinformation, is now more easily accessible and has the potential for wider circulation online. This can have detrimental consequences for society. For example, if I rely on, say, a fake cure, then this can have adverse physical consequences for my health and undermine the support for much needed policy initiatives. The threat posed by mis- and disinformation is now well recognised, and there have been various policy and legal initiatives to combat it. The ones which I will be discussing today are the EU's Digital Services Act and the Code of Conduct on Disinformation. So the Digital Services Act came into force in 2022 with the goal of creating a uniform set of obligations to reduce harms and counter risks online. All platforms must now be more transparent with their content moderation processes and how their algorithms recommend content. The idea here is to make users more aware of how and why they are seeing certain content. However, the most onerous obligations are reserved for very large online platforms and search engines, i.e. those which have more than 45 million member state users. Platforms and search engines which fall under this category must undertake risk assessment measures to consider how the design of the service is influencing these systemic risks, and also undertake risk mitigation measures. This was recently done in regards to X, which received a €120 million fine for failing to comply with its transparency obligations. So you may be asking, how does this relate to mis- and disinformation? And the answer is when the mis- and disinformation falls under these systemic risks. In particular, the protection of public health or a person's physical and mental well-being naturally relates to some types of scientific mis- and disinformation. Under such conditions, a very large online platform or very large online search engine would need to take steps to assess and mitigate the mis- and disinformation. Now, they could use several mitigation measures, one of which is the Code of Conduct on Disinformation. The Code of Conduct targets mis- and disinformation generally and encourages the adoption of a sweeping range of measures. In particular, these include demonetization, so for example, not publishing false or misleading advertisements, user empowerment, so providing more and better tools to help users navigate online, for example, the ability to identify false or misleading content, fact-checking coverage, so recognizing the importance of consistently using and integrating fact-checkers' work into the design of their services, and then also reducing manipulative behavior, so limiting and countering impermissible manipulative behaviors such as fake accounts and bot-driven amplification. There are also measures to ensure that the code is fit for purpose. For example, the Transparency Centre provides a common and accessible reference point on transparency and accountability. The Permanent Task Force ensures that the code is evolving and adapting. And then there's also a monitoring framework which implements regular reporting. The overarching point here is that very large online platforms and search engines could adopt these measures against mis- and disinformation, including that which is a systemic risk. Now, the DSA and the Code of Conduct are important as they outline formal requirements or commitments which help to address mis- and disinformation of any type. It is, however, worth noting that there are some limitations. For example, both are primarily targeting very large online search engines and platforms. The DSA leaves smaller platforms free from the additional obligations surrounding systemic risks. So theoretically, smaller platforms which still have a notable reach would be free from those risk assessment and mitigation measures. 2, there is a degree of discretion and uncertainty. The DSA outlines a range of possible measures which could be used, leaving the platform or search engine the option of which one to choose. The code of conduct is also voluntary, so there is always the potential for platforms to opt out, as was the case with X, which left the code in 2023, or the opportunity to pick and choose commitments. So there is a level of lack of certainty and a lack of consistent potentially inconsistent application. So as such, while the DSA and the Code of Conduct have been positive steps in tackling mis and disinformation, there are still questions surrounding their efficacy. Thank you for listening.